this, but let's get started, okay? Here's where I wanted to go. This page, I think you can read. And so I'm going to ask you to read this page and look at some of this artwork. And these are contemporary artists that are kind of doing the same thing as Audrey Flack. Now, I mentioned that Audrey Flack was doing a Vanita, V-A-N-I-T-Y, I-T-A, I'm sorry, Vanita. That's not helpful. Life is vanity. Like you go chasing after wealth, you go chasing after a degree, you go chasing after a person, and at the end of the day, you're going to die. So biblically, it comes from like Mary Magdalene is a good Vanita figure. She's like gorgeous and beautiful, but as she gets older, she realizes that if inside you don't have your spirituality in balance, that when you die, all that beauty just fades away and you're going to fade away. So what's eternal versus what fades away? Big thing. There's also something called a Momento Mori, and you can see that spelled on this page. If you give somebody a memento, it's like a remembrance, and Mori, moribund, mortician, means death. So it's a reminder of death. So when you see things like a skull, or maybe a candle extinguished, or an hourglass that's empty, that's a memento mori, a reminder of death. Now, some of the paintings we're going to look at next, I'm going to ask you to go through this and check this kind of stuff out. Sometimes we look at these like Renaissance paintings, and I want you to be able to relate it to like everyday life. So it's not like a museum, but these are ideas in museums that we still see around today. Now, a skull is a main symbol of a memento mori, is a main reminder of death. Can you think of any places in real life where you see memento moris? Anybody?
Memorials.
Oh yeah, a memorial, and we see a lot of like street memorials. Those are memento mori, and we're going to talk about in a little bit memorials like street memorials to George Floyd versus monuments to Confederate generals. Those are all memento moris. That's a good one. Does anybody know somebody with like a skull tattoo? Or do you have skull jewelry or have seen like a skull print on something? Does anybody in the class have a skull tattoo? Does anybody in the class have a skull tea towel or a skull t-shirt? Just say yes. Like unmute and say yes.
Yes.
Okay, I heard a couple. So those are contemporary memento moris, and they can be kind of fun because if you look at some of the things that we have talked about with both Durr, Night, Death, and the Devil, and Audrey Flack, you'll see some symbols. So what I did here was I made a page for you to like think about and do a match game on, because I think sometimes doing it yourself is fun, but I thought I would help you out. I'm sorry, my screen share is keeping me from hitting the next button. I just love it when it does this. So what I have to do is I have to go up to modules to go take you to the next page. So read this page because this page is going to help you the most for that paper I was talking about. And also some other stuff. So we just looked at content, Vanitas and Memento Mori, and it's like read these links and take this match game, see if you got it. Here is me helping you with it so that when you read that page, you'll be like, okay, what did I have to remember? So at the top of this page, I just went online for the first part of it and went, okay, well, you know, if I typed in Vanita or Memento Mori, what would I get? And I saw in images that there was this little thing that was explaining what the meanings were. And we're going to do that today. But once you see this analysis at the top of the page, I think it'll help you figure out how to look at the paintings to write your paper. We're going to compare one of these old master paintings done several hundred years before to Audrey Flack's Wheel of Fortune. Okay, so you can do a comparison. I get this first one, I think. You know, mostly the skull equals death, and I see in the hourglass that it's half run out. So I know in Night, Death, and the Devil, Death's horse bowed down to smell a skull, and Death was holding an hourglass, and so that means death. So when I tell you, you know, these interpretations, it's not just me interpreting it. It's like there's this language that goes way, way back, just like verbal language. And when you start seeing a word repeated over and over in different contexts, that is a word with other things around it in a sentence, you understand it better. Here we're seeing words, visual words, skull, hourglass, in context with other things around it. So the tulip is a very expensive flower. A couple hundred years ago, it was like used for currency, the tulip bulbs, and so it's a symbol of wealth. And see how you see that vessel? Anytime you see a vase or a vessel, a lot of times it's our physical vessel, like our bodies. And at death, our bodies are left behind and something leaves them, right? So I have a vessel holding this very, very wealthy status symbol. And the other thing about flowers is they fade and die. So that whole thing about a Vanita, life is vanity, like you can be vain by having beautiful flowers, you can be vain by being rich, you can be vain about your beauty, but it's all going to fade in the end. Now here, we got another one, and I'd like for you to just open mic if you can figure out, we've got the skull, we got the hourglass. What else do we have that we've seen somewhere else that you can get in this one? Somebody say.
A candle.
The fruit.
Okay, I heard the candle and the fruit. The fruit, isn't it funny how it's grapes and red grapes? And in Audrey Flack's, it's red grapes. And so grapes mature into wine. Grapes can turn into raisins. Grapes are juicy for a while, but they fade. Now, who said candle? What do you notice about the candle?
Oh, it's out.
So that would make you think what?
Burnt out, ran out, kind of, I guess.
Yeah, burn out and run out of time. That's really good. And notice that the candle is between the cherries and the hourglass. So you have the cherries, you're snuffed out, your time's up, you die. I mean, you can go left to right. Now, I see that next to the hourglass, there's a inkwell and a quill. Like in the old time, they would dip a quill into the ink well to write. What do you think that might be about? And it's okay if you're wrong. And if you wait and like are too shy, it gets boring. So just jump in, would you?
Well, it has an open book like under the skull, and there's no writing on it.
Excellent. Yeah. So have you written your life? Like, if I asked you what your life is about now, and you're like, video games, and I'm like, well, do you want to have a legacy when you die? It's like, oh yeah, you haven't written your page in the book, have you? So are you going to let other people write the story for you? But the blank page, yeah, it could be that now the page is blank, there's nothing left to write, or it could be an unwritten story. I noticed that the book is almost closed. Like there's a book and those ribbons would keep it closed, like tie it closed like a diary. So under the hourglass, with the quill still out, it's like, okay, there's that moment that you realize you're going to die, that the book is closing. You have to lay down your pen. That little thing with the holes is a recorder, which is a kind of flute. Now I see that I've got grapes and an hourglass and a closed book and a book that's closing. And then I got that flute. And a lot of times there's a reference to music in these things. What do you think that might be about? That's a harder one. What do you think? Oh, come on. Everybody's not stuck, are they? Help me out. Ananya, what do you think?
I don't even know.
So in visual language, this is like seeing a word and you don't know what it means, right? And so you have to like decide what it means sometimes with the word by taking it apart. Music has a beginning and an end. And unlike a sculpture or a painting, once the music's over, I can't hold on to it. It just evaporates into air. So you might say once they've sung their song, or once the song is over, there's silence. Music kind of delights you while you're alive, but then once it's over, its time is up. So music is kind of about time. It can also sometimes be about breath. Like, why not a drum for a heartbeat? Or why not a tuba, So the flutes take breath to play and how hard and soft you blow. So once your breathing stops, you can't play your music anymore. These things are kind of deep. All right, here's another one. And I'll give you a little hint. That thing on the right is an oil lamp. So I see an oil lamp being snuffed out. I see a quill, a feather in the lower right-hand corner. Sometimes it's hard to read because these are old-timey things, but that's the writings up. On the left, I see a skull, and if you're careful, you'll see an hourglass. So we already know that. Now, how about this book? What do you notice about this book? Anybody?
Oh, there's notes. There's notes on it.
Music notes.
Yeah, cool. So now you're picking it up. So those notes are like the song of your life, the music of your life. And instead of having the flute, we have this like book of life. Your song is over. And I definitely get it's over because there's bones on top of it. Now, if I have a goblet, that's a goblet that's fallen over. And, in goblets, you drink wine. And they drink a lot of alcohol back in this time period. So if I have wine goblet that's been spilled, can anybody get that one?
It had poison in it, I believe.
Yeah, it could be poison. And so, life gets poisoned by death. Maybe the person was poisoned. It could be, remember in Audrey Flack, there was a wine glass that was half empty, showing she was halfway through her life. Well, if your wine glass is emptied over or knocked over, the vessel can't hold water anymore. You can't hold your spirit anymore. It's kind of like your body's your vessel and it's been emptied out. Below, I have no idea. I see the bone underneath the skull. And to tell you the truth, I do not know what that object is that's laying on the book. I think it might look like a bow, like what you might use on a violin, but that's kind of choppy to me. So even for me, sometimes there are things that if I don't know what they are, I'd look them up. And Jean Chardin, all these people are super famous. And so if you just, found this image and clicked on the museum that it's in, they can tell you what these are. Hint for a future paper. I see below the cup that there's a watch, time's up. There's a nut. Once that nut is cracked open, it's like it's exposing the meat. It's kind of like seeing the bones inside the nut. And so it's like your life has been opened up, which is kind of a stretch if you ask me. Let's go to another one where it's not as much of a stretch. Oh, are you starting to see a lot of similarities? Okay, fruit that's peeled is going to rot. So a lot of times in these still lifes, you'll see flowers with bugs on them. And that means you might, remember we're talking Vanita, not just death, being vain. And so a flower can be beautiful, but a bug can eat it as it decays, and fruit will decay. So you might see flies on some of the food, or you might see a rat, you're going to die and just become fodder for an animal to eat. So while there may be different interpretations, you will probably be spot on if your personal interpretation kind of goes with the general interpretation. So I might say, for instance, a horse equals power. Now, some guy in the class might think horsepower. And I'd be like, yeah, that's right. And then I might think horse power. My sister is a rancher and is amazing on a horse. I mean, she's an amazing horsewoman. And so when I think of horsepower, I think of speed and capability. Other people might think of dreaming about a horse, which usually means creative power, but they all have power in them, okay? So when I explain the meanings of these still lifes, they are generally correct. They are well informed, but somewhere online there may be another scholar who says, let's tweak that a little bit more. And I've studied like 5,000 images of this artist's work, and I can tell you that that power means something a little different. So I just want to kind of say that it's not like it's a mathematical answer. So if you pick up something different in your research, think of how it connects. That being said, when you see shells, we are often like shells. That is, I might think of a nautilus shell where the living thing has a small shell, and then it has to go to a bigger shell and a bigger shell and a bigger shell. And so even things like crabs have to shed their shells. They become soft shells. And that's a metaphor for shedding your skin. Okay, because your skin's encased you. So these are oysters on a plate. The world is your oyster. Oysters are like for wealthy people. But even if you're an oyster and you have these shells, you're going to open up and die. Here we see again the goblet, half full, half empty. Here is a silver fruit tray where all the silver that's held all your wealth has spilled. I see another walnut, and then I see an orange being peeled. And I told you in Van Eyck's marriage portrait, remember there were oranges on the windowsill, and I said that showed wealth. So here, all the wealthy food you have, you're just going to die. Now, here's a harder one. Who can see something in this that I haven't talked about? Wait, maybe some stuff I have talked about. Let's just name the stuff you notice. What do you notice here?
A knife or dagger.
Jewelry.
Okay, a knife. Cool, jewelry.
The blue cloth.
The oyster.
Oh, the blue. Yeah. Do you see how you're starting to speak visual language? You guys name some stuff that I didn't see at first. So the oysters we just talked about, and the knife, you know how you can have two edges of a knife? A knife can definitely mean death, right? Well, you could have like a silver dagger, a fine sword, but there's two edges to that. The jewelry, remember in Audrey Flack's Real Fortune, I said the crystal necklace showed wealth, like getting really preoccupied with acquiring things. And that's the same thing with that silver chain. And then notice that on the right, that tall vertical thing is an hourglass. And then the hourglass is sitting on an open book that's blank. And then whoever said blue cloth, I'm like, oh, duh, I didn't like name that right at first. And we talked about that blue cloth being like the veil of heaven that's pulled away. So some of these, what do you think a pipe means? Anybody?
A smoker.
So what does smoke and death or vanity have to do together? What do you think? Like if you're up in smoke, or I say ashes to ashes, can somebody make that connection? People smoke for pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. So how about, when you smoke, you have this pipe, you're smoking for pleasure, and maybe you're spending a lot of money on fine tobacco or fine weed or whatever you're spending your money on. You want the finest, but once you light it up, you have the pleasure of smoking, but then the smoke, sometimes you think of spirits as kind of smoke, right? Like it's something spiritual, something that used to be here has now burnt up and is releasing its, scent, releasing its spirit. Well, we talk about candles burning up, burning the candle at both ends. So smoke is kind of like that. And you're starting to see some similarities. I got this.
So like releasing like the ashes of a human being.
Yeah. Like cremation, right? Like
Okay.
one of the hardest thing about my father passing away was him passing away. But the moment I realized he'd been reduced to ashes, there's like nothing physically really left anymore. That was an incredible emotional experience for me. So yeah, you're right on about that. By the way, that vine there is a grapevine. So you have that whole grape theme. Notice here, we got a blue cloth. We got a book closing. On the right, we have a vessel. Now, the thing behind the vessel, it's brown and it has like curving stripes on it. That's a lute, L-U-T-E. And it's kind of like a guitar with a real rounded back. And then the thing, so that's like the music thing, like they've laid down their lute. If you play the guitar, you strum the strings and the vibration has ended. And then to the left of the lute, right above the skull, is a metal thing. That's a lamp, like an oil lamp. Then you see that there's a sword, that long brown thing coming down, pointing to the shell. There is a timepiece, a watch between the sword and the skull. And then I see another flute. Now, you're like, okay, I'm starting to get it. The light is the light of heaven. So the other thing you can pay attention to here is if you have darkness and then you have light, like you can live your life in darkness, going after wealth and, status, but you're kind of blind and dark to the light of heaven. And so when a light comes down and goes boom and hits something, like this is hitting the skull. And so, at the moment of death, God is going to see what's going on with you. And you can sometimes, by seeing what is next to something else, make some cool connections. Like, I'm not saying this is accurate. I'm saying it's one possible thing you could think. The sword, I notice that it's right between the lamp and the skull. And the lamp is kind of like your spirit, your light, and then your death. And I notice that the sword is put right between the light, the lamp, and the skull. So when God looks at you, it's like, which way did it cut? There's two sides of the knife. Did you stay on the side of vanity or did you go over to spirituality? So you can get into these sukkahs pretty well. Let me see. Yeah, that's the next one I wanted to do. What do you think about this?
First thing I saw was the mask.
Yeah, me too.
What do you think the mask is about, Sharnae?
Maybe he was a really secretive person.
He won't read it. Yeah, wasn't himself.
Yeah, he was a secretive person. Some like a man.
You're not yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, or secretive. Yeah, the other. Sometimes in society we wear a mask,
or
like you put on a face. What, Sharnae? Say it again.
I said, or he wasn't really happy. Is that a gun?
That is a gun. Yeah, that's a good point because obviously the artist is, these aren't photographs. They had to paint the suckers. So they're like spending hours doing this. So they're thinking about it. And Sharnae, when you're like, he's not happy, you could have masks that are like comedy and tragedy masks. And here it's kind of like, I don't know what I'm feeling kind of mask, right? How about, so I see a gun.
There's flowers too.
Yeah. So the flowers are, look at how the flowers are next to the mask.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes your personal, go ahead.
Oh, and I said that there's some treasure, a chest full of wealth and jewelry.
And I noticed that there's a gold belt. That thing with the yellowish circles is like a gold chain or a belt.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that the skull is sitting on actually a Bible, and it's probably open to a passage. The thing that's to the, see how there's a skull and a candle on the left? The thing on the left of the candle is the bottom of a skull. Like that, the hole is where your spine would go in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on the flowers and the mask and the gun, when something speaks to you, it may be true, like a poem is true, and then it might really resonate with you. And so you have this personal appreciation as well as a understanding. I'm going to just give you a quick one. Last semester I had breast cancer. It was horrible teaching through it, but those of you who stuck with me know that I, every class session, put on my face, put on my makeup, kind of spruced up stuff around me so I wouldn't look so awful. And it really helped me actually a lot, but I put on a face. So when I look at those flowers that are fading and that mask, and then I look at kind of like the gun, like, okay, a symbol of death, and then I see the music, you know, an experience like that makes you realize that you better play your music pretty freely because you're going to die. I'm not saying that for you to go, oh, poor Mescalino. I'm saying that because sometimes you might know someone who's passed or have a memorial. And when you write about these paintings, it's okay to include that, but you also have to like acknowledge that that's not the universal meaning, it's the personal meaning. Anyway, there's something to the right of the skull. There's some leaves. Can anybody recognize that? Especially if you're an athlete, can you recognize it?
Is it olive?
Pretty close. What would it be if it was an olive branch? What would you think? Come on,
Somebody,
peace. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
I say somebody that's either like athletic or bringing about like unity, peace.
You know, that's really good. It's a laurel wreath. And in ancient Greece and continuing through the Romans, whenever somebody would like win a race, they'd put a laurel wreath on their head. And sometimes you'll see like Julius Caesar, some of the Roman emperors wearing laurel wreaths. It's like a halo, of course, a wreath on your head, but it's a sign of a hero. So like you can be a hero, you can have, if you wear a laurel wreath, like a Nobel laureate, it means that you've received honors in some way. So, and I think that's a breastplate to the right of the laurel wreath. So you're getting it pretty well here. And there's a few things I might want to interpret, but you're getting it now. Here's a really weird one.
Wait, I think I want to point out something.
Yeah. Let's hear it. What you got?
Like above the laurel wreath, I think I see some sort of crown. Like it looks like a crown.
Yeah, it does. It looks like one of the crowns, like without the silk insert.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you know, material can also be skin. You know, skin is material over your bones. So what if you were, you know, only wealthy people could afford paintings during this time. So what if you were like nobility? Are you served the crown, right? Now, there's things that you can do, like look these up online. I think it's more fun for you to figure it out for yourself and then look them up online. There's some that are really, there's some interpretations that are really wrong. Like, this is a portrait of a man who shot somebody and cut their face off and stole all their money. It's like, nah, that's the wrong interpretation. And you know that because you can see some historical connections. So you can say, personally, I believe that object in the corner is a crown, and to me that represents. But you can also say, I looked at the object in the corner and found out it was a breastplate or something. Here's a harder one. I see some things I know.
I see bubbles.
There's a. What do you think the bubbles are about?
Couldn't tell you.
I know. It's weird. It's like, you know how you would recognize a word, but you don't know what it means?
Mm-hmm.
Do bubbles last very long?
No.
No.
They're
Are
fragile.
bubbles really just a reflection? Huh?
They're fragile.
Ah, life is fragile. Life doesn't last very long. Notice how they're rising. So it's kind of like I see smoke from the candle rising up like spirit. And, you know, what leaves your body when you die? This kind of ethereal light.
Like your soul
Bubbles.
ascending.
Yeah, your soul ascending. And, you know, as soon as you said that, it's interesting because then, I mean, when people say that people at this time were illiterate, what they mean is they couldn't, most of them could not read and write. But if you stuck them in front of a painting like this or put something like this in a church, almost everybody could read a picture, like really carefully. And so they were visually literate during the Middle Ages, but they weren't text literate. So yeah, then I look at the soap bubbles and see how there's a window in the soap bubble. Like you could have a reflection of the sky or anything, but it's a window. And I see that it looks like the light is passing through the bubble. And remember I told you in Robert Campion's Annunciation, where they had a window and the Jesus baby came through the window. And I said, anytime light passes through glass, it's like God's light penetrating you. So you could say that, you know, it's a window to your soul or a window to God because it's reflecting this light coming from above. So yeah, spiritual ascension. The below the bubble on the left is a round box, and that's cheese in there. Like cheese. It's like moldy cheese, and moldy cheese like a blue cheese or a camembert or a whatever was very, very expensive because it had to be aged. And so it's this idea that milk, which is what gives life, can turn into this kind of stinky, rotten thing that at one point you can enjoy, but if it gets too old, it won't. What the heck is happening with all those rectangles? Has anybody figured that one out? That's like pretty weird, isn't it?
Is it like
That's
a
what I love
life
about it.
cycle, like repeating?
Yeah. Do you read it as a mirror? That is what it is. It's a mirror. And so what happens is you see repeated within it, within it, within it. And I don't know whether it's a painting to look like a mirror or a real mirror. That I would have to research.
Another mirror, wouldn't it have to be another mirror in front of it?
Across from it, yeah. So I will go with painting. Your art professor knows a whole lot about art, but I don't know every single piece of art everywhere. And I like putting up artwork that I know a lot about, but I don't know everything about, because sometimes you guys see things that I didn't see. And what I really like about being a college professor is I always get to learn. Yeah. So if it's a painting within a painting within a painting within a painting, it puts Jan van Eyck to shame. This one reminds me of Groundhog Day. You wake up and every morning it's the same. But also it is look in the mirror, reflect on your life. The piece of wood with a hole in it is an artist palette. And that artist palette has been scraped clean. So you can see that it's been used before, but the artist, upon reflecting and painting the painting within the painting within the painting, has scraped, the colors have come off. Their palette is clean. They've laid down their brush. So just like a violinist laying down his bow or a guitarist laying down his instrument, you know, the creative, expressive part of you is over. Now, do you
So
think
like
you
a
guys
blank slate.
Oh, yeah. Yes, a blank slate. You know, one of the things I think that when you said that, I noticed that there's no blue cloth on the table.
No, but there's a
And
blue ribbon with a key on it.
Is this not like playing detective? See, you guys see, I see the blue ribbon, but you guys make cool connections. You know, when you said that, I was just getting ready to notice the dice. And I thought the dice was kind of interesting.
Are those tour cards inside the bowl?
No, that's moldy cheese.
No, beside it. Looks like cards.
Oh, maybe it is. He does. Cheese is a big, let me edit and we'll see. Cheese is a big thing in these, like meat, rotting meat, cheese. I might have been incorrect on that particular one. Like I say, I don't know all about all the paintings. That's why I do this. It'll take me a minute to load and then let's find out. Don't you think you should get extra points for seeing things a teacher didn't? Like if you teach me, I should give you extra points because that's part of the coolness of looking at art together. Okay, let's see. We went here. We did this one. We're down on this. Oh, Lord, I think I was wrong. Oh, I love it when I'm wrong. Who caught me on that? Tell me your name. Who said it's tarot cards? I'll give you points if you let me know, for goodness sakes.
Say it, damn
well,
it. Say it.
but I ain't say it.
But okay, but
No, I was going to say, see, I was wrong, wasn't I? I believe you're right. I'll have to find another painting. I'll have to redeem myself and I'll have to find one of the paintings with cheese on it because those are the ones that have little mice in them. So yeah, I was wrong on that one. Cool. Now I've lost your trust. Can you believe this painting though? Like the thing that's so amazing to me is that not only did they paint this, but they had to like have handmade brushes for it. And they mixed all their own paints for it. And they didn't have photographs for reference pictures. Here, let me see if I can make that bigger. They didn't have reference pictures for it. Ugh, I hate canvas. Okay, I could do this, couldn't I? There you go. Look at how far back that crazy painting goes. It's hard to think. This is somebody who is taking a blank canvas, picking up a brush, dabbing paint on it, and then making this. I mean, it's kind of magical. We were talking about that slab. Notice how it's a marble slab. And if I think of death, I think of a marble slab. Some of you with literature might know tabula rasa, which means blank slate. It's a belief that we're not predetermined, that our life is a blank slate. And you actually might find some literary devices in here. I mean, text literacy and visual. Now, while we're looking at this, how are we doing? So
is the number 5 significant in this painting?
I'm sure it is in some way. Go ahead.
There's 5 frames, and then you have the number 5 facing you on the dice.
Oh, that's so cool. Are there anything else that you'd number 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't really see. I see more than 5 objects. There are 5 cards.
Paintings, so you see it 5 times in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there's 5 on the dice. I'm looking.
So there's 5 of everything. Essentially, because of the mirrors.
And I'll give you another weird clue while you're like looking at the details. Triangles mean spirituality, like the Trinity, right? Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. See how the composition of, if you just look at the whole shape of the skulls and the candles in the mirror, see how it makes a triangle?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be spiritual. All right. So your next assignment would be to take Audrey Flack or another contemporary painting and take one of these and see if you can make connections with them. And that's another week away. However, for next Wednesday, I have something cool for you. All right. So you take this in, and I think you guys, you know, if I overinterpret it, I take the fun away from you. Do I not? Like then I don't know. I truly do not know what the number 5 means on that. The page before the one that we were talking about has links to some museums that talk about Vanita and Momento Mori. And if you kind of go through that page after today, you'll ace it. The pages take you to like the Tate, which is like one of the major museums in London. Google Art and Culture has all these paintings on it. And when you follow the links in the previous page, it has all kinds of stuff on it. So what I actually did was I put in the names of these most famous artists that are known for this traditionally, and they're listed in the link on the previous page. Like when you go to there's a page that explains what this is about, and then that names the artist of this time period who kind of made this famous. So all I did was I took their names, put it into an internet search, and came up with images that's like, yeah, Vanitas and Memento Moris that I thought would be fun for us to talk about. I am not an art historian, so I haven't researched all of them. So if you see the number 5, and I don't know what it means, you can find it somewhere online, or Google Art and Culture will take you right there. I wonder, they may even have a match where you like could do a screenshot and match it. Anyway, so notes like that will be in your next reflective paper, like we could practically write it now. But here's something fun. Okay, everybody has a cell phone, right? Everybody has stuff at home. You will notice that by next Wednesday, what I want you to do is to use your cell phone and make a metaphorical still life at home. Take a photo of it and post it to a discussion board. Now, you happen to be lucky if you have like a candle at home, a piece of fruit at home, if you can find a flower, but you might not be able, like I don't expect you to have an hourglass, but you might have a clock, a watch, or the time, or a calendar. Now, I showed you on the page before, the one we just were on, examples of contemporary artists. And those contemporary artists like use all kinds of things to symbolize a Momento Mori or a Vanita. For instance, a bird, because a bird flies, you could say, well, birds are spiritual. You know, a dove is spiritual. You might say a Nike represents speed, like life goes by fast. You might have some earbuds that symbolize music, right? So we are updating what we were just looking at as a Momento Mori or a Vanita. And I'd like for you to make a symbolic still life that you consider a Vanita or a Momento Mori. And you might want to consider things like background. What's a blue cloth versus a black cloth? Your bedspread should not appear in the still life, or a carpet, unless it's exactly what you want. So if you had like a white sheet that you put up, or you put up camouflage, and you thought as a background, or you put up a blue drape as a background, I want you to think about the background. And then we noticed in Audrey Flack's Wheel of Fortune, she kind of placed things in a circle. And in the painting within the painting within the painting, things were kind of placed in a triangle, you know, something here, something here, something here. So I want you to think it out. And I want you to kind of be like, okay, I want my classmates to be like detectives. Like I'm clearly saying something, but I'm not going to write anything about it. So when you post this to the discussion for next Wednesday, don't say anything, just post the image, okay? You can put a filter on it if you like. You might want to go to Google Arts and Culture and type in Vanita or Momento Mori, although the links that I have on the page will take you there too. The cell phone still life could be about life in general, could be about your feelings about life and death, or it could be a memorial to a specific person. But if it's a memorial to a specific, your grandmother, for instance, I would like for it to be about your grandmother, but also what your grandmother symbolically represents. So you may have a grandmother and I may have a grandmother, but we want to say both those grandmothers represented wisdom, and they were really important to a part of the family tree. Well, I might have a picture of my grandmother on top of books to show wisdom, and then maybe I'll have a broken tree branch to show that the tree has been, broken apart with it. So it can be a personal thing, but it doesn't have to. Now, how about any questions? Anybody have questions? Do you think you can do it? Your head going this way means yes, and your head going this way is Not your head, move your head in one direction or the other. Everybody all at once now.
So for the still fine
Jasmine, yes or no? Emily, I know you can do it. Alana, thanks for the thumbs up. Emily, you're pretty vocal and pretty good. What random things can you think of at this moment that you would do with this assignment? Emily.
Well, at the moment I'm trying to decide whether I want to do Memento Mori or I want to do one that I think all the good things in life and how it runs out. So I play the violin, so I have that, and I could have it so that the bow was flipped the opposite way or underneath the violin to show that the music has stopped. I have an hourglass that's actually really pretty.
Oh, you're lucky.
Yeah, it's actually really pretty. Hold on.
A lantern, a tea light, a candle. Yeah, that's beautiful. And Emily, the way that is without a cage on it makes me think of a soap bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That too.
So you could, now, whether the hourglass was low or, then you have what?
Oh, the painting stuff that I have, like the easels and my paints and the paintings that I just did that I could use. I have a whole list.
Okay, so you're good. Whether you put the hourglass at the top of the frame or at the bottom of the frame, because her hourglass looks like a bubble, I'd be like, oh, could you figure out, if you have something to set it on top of, it would look like it was more bubble-like, which made me also think, if you had anybody help you out, you could blow soap bubbles into the picture, or you could blow smoke into the picture to have smoke happening. Leah, what are you thinking you might use at this point? Can you help these newbies out?
I think I might do something between my grandparents, either my grandfather who was in the who was in the Navy. I'll ask my dad if he has any trinkets from him, or something from my grandmother on my mother's side. See if I can figure something out.
About your grandmother. Tell me something about your grandmother.
She was very talkative and loved to use her mind or speak her mind.
Okay. So, you could have something about the military, and I think you have military honors. You could also think about wars. We have so many wars and disagreements, and, if somebody, when I became sick, I didn't want to have disagreements with anybody, because if my life is over, why would I want to leave, with negative things between me and anyone else? So wars and military could show the way you try to, how you have disagreements, but it could also be military honors. Your grandma, you can say all you want, but, after a while, she isn't able to speak anymore. What would you have for somebody who talked a lot, Leah? Can you think?
Bright colors, probably.
A microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, a mic. That's good.
And another thing,
I thought,
do an
go
anchor.
ahead, Emily.
You could do a microphone for someone who talks, or the anchor for the Navy, or a little boat or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or like
Anchor,
navy colors.
a lot of symbolic stuff, doesn't it? It seems like an anchor is what you're anchored in. Like if I saw an anchor next to a Bible versus an anchor next to money, I would think two really different things, right? In addition to tarot cards, you could have word cards, or you could have sayings written on paper. Like, let's see. My my father's advice to me was pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. And what he meant by that is it's okay to be a little greedy, but if you're too greedy, it's going to come back and, you know, you're going to get slaughtered. People don't like people who are hogs. You can be a little pig. So if I wrote that saying on a piece of paper, you know, I'd laugh because it would be a funny thing that my very intelligent father had taught me. But also if you read it, it would be about gluttony. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. And so it could be about gluttony, you know. Yeah, if you're, I kind of think that Vanitas could be approached thinking about sins, because you think you're going to get by with it. And I personally don't remember all 7 deadly sins. I probably do some of them. Gluttony is one. Pride is one. Does anybody else know the other sins?
Greed.
Greed. Yeah.
Vanity.
Vanity. So if I did gluttony, greed, vanity, pride, if I wrote those in a notebook, I bet I could come up with a list of things I associate with them. Like gluttony would be, you know, cake and ice cream and whipped cream with a cherry on top, right? So if you thought of 7 deadly sins and thought of those, that would definitely be about vanity. You know, I'm enjoying all of the richness of life. And then, you know, what do you think comes after? Now, the Momento Mori focuses more on the death. The Vanita focuses more on how you live your life, thinking every day you're closer to death. So they're a little different. So this is done with a cell phone. I wanted to say, this is not a cell phone photo. This is a work of art, okay? So you're making art with your cell phone. And I'd like for you to think of it as being almost like an Instagram worthy. I want you to, in the next few creative projects, the closest thing would be for you to be an influencer. Because influencers, if you think about it, mostly influence through pictures. Like usually the captions are one word, maybe a sentence. But if you're an influencer, it's like really, really staged on the photos, right? Well, influencers are amazingly good at visual literacy because they're using visual literacy to influence you. So I want you to think of this as a super Instagram-worthy influencer art photo that's like really artistic, not a picture of a bunch of junk. All right.